Hello, and welcome to Books from Your Therapist, a podcast where we talk to therapists and mental health practitioners about their mental health related book recommendations. By mixing book talk with mental health, we hope to open up the conversation around books your therapist may have suggested and make them more accessible.
This podcast is not a substitute for mental health care. It's for educational and entertainment purposes only.
I'm Amanda Throckmorton, a marriage and family therapist in California.
And I'm Tara Kremen, and I work in the book industry in Toronto, in Canada. In this episode, it's just Amanda and I, and we're talking all about love. The books that we picked to talk about are Bell Hooks, All About Love, and Patti Smith's Kids.
A New York Times bestseller, enduring classic, All About Love is an acclaimed first volume in feminist icon Bell Hooks' Love Song to the Nation trilogy. All About Love reveals what causes a polarized society and how to heal the divisions that cause suffering. Here is the truth about love, an inspiration to help us instill caring, compassion, and strength in our homes, schools, and workplaces.
Written by Patti Smith about her relationship with Robert Mapplethorpe, Just Kids begins as a love story and ends as an elegy. It serves as a salute to New York City during the late 60s and 70s, to its rich and poor, its hustlers and hellions. A true fable, it is a portrait of two young artists' ascent and their prelude to fame. It was a really great conversation. I brought the scratchy love voice to this conversation, so forgive my faded throat, but I think it's okay.
We love it. The sexy voice for this one.
I know. We blame conferencing and talking too much. But anyways, let's get into the first book. So the first book we're going to talk about is All About Love by Bell Hooks, and this was your pick, Amanda. So why did you pick this book?
I chose this book because I had never read it. And, I was thinking this is our 20th episode,
Mm,
and we have never done one about love, which I thought was so interesting. Like, we've talked about relationships, sex in relationships and all friendships, like all these different relational things. And we've never gotten to like talk about love, and which is so fascinating now, having read this book, which is like essentially talking about how we as a society like don't have a great definition for love. We tend to sort of have these blocks in avoidance of seeking love. And so I thought like, oh, like this is so interesting, like a podcast about books and therapy. And we have yet to discuss something that is so important to all of us, which is love.
I mean, I guess because it's like when I think of love, I think of it as such a positive thing. And if you think about like needing to go to therapy, you're probably in a lower space. But I guess you're seeking love, so it is kind of relevant. So kind of funny that we haven't discussed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because it's the hopefully the root of relationships, right? And we've talked about all these different aspects of relationships outside of like what is love and where
Mm.
is like the love in those relationships. And so, yeah, I think it sort of mirrors what she kind of talks about in this book, which is we don't have a clear definition of it, and we tend to sort of like mucky up other things around it before actually like understanding ourselves in it and how to love.
Can you give a bit of an overview about the book itself? Because I think I was familiar with this, but also hadn't read it. I think I had downloaded it probably when Bell Hooks had passed. I was like, there was a lot of stuff online, and I had always meant to read it, but I wasn't sure what to expect going into it. So can you maybe give a bit of an overview?
Yeah, absolutely. I similarly had not read it and had always seen it and been curious about it. It's a book that is like structured thematically, with each chapter exploring like a different definition of love. And it begins with defining what love is. And she talks about how, yeah, we don't actually have a clear definition, and how, she had gone through parts of her life not having a clearer definition of what it is and what it was for her, and how that must have impacted the way she showed up for others and how she received love. And then it moves through how we experience or fail to experience love in like childhood, family, romance, community, spirituality, and culture. She uses cultural critique to talk about it. She talks about like personal experience, and it's definitely a book that at least I wanted to go really slowly with. It's not a super long book, but my favorite phrase is just like has all these nuggets of wisdom. Like my copy is pretty well marked up, and I just think that there's a lot to gain from this book. To me, it's one of those books that you can kind of pick up wherever and like read a chapter and feels like you gain something from that. Like I do think it's great to read from, the beginning to the end, but I also feel like, if you're like, let me read something about children or let me read something about how I feel like greed or consumerism like impacts love, this is a great book just to pick up and go from there.
I think I probably thought that this would just be like a book of poetry or something when it's just like all
Hmm.
about love. But you are saying that I think some of the points that it touches on that are so important are like love within consumerism and love within like the society that we're sort of part of, against our will a lot of the time. But how we find love in those different areas. Yeah, it was really interesting. It was because yeah, I guess like thinking about love from like a psychological point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, there's just so many standalone quotes and passages from this that I feel like one could read really slowly and like let those words like sit with them for a while. And I think ultimately this book is sort of like a call to action, like framing love as not a noun, but an action that we constantly have to be seeking out and working towards is like an important takeaway from it as well. So Hooks explains the concept of love and discovers that it's mostly undefined. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I liked that she got into the technical of like let's go to the dictionary. Like, what are the definitions of love? And it was kind of interesting that it wasn't clearly defined. I think she talks a lot about how it's men that are writing the definitions of what love is as well, even though perhaps women are reading more about love or surrounding themselves with like romance books or things like that, like for just specifically to romantic love. But like the concept of it being undefined kind of made sense because I was like, yeah, it's an abstract thing. Of course it's undefined. It's a feeling. But then I was thinking about like other episodes that we've done that are about like, naming those emotions and naming the feelings. So yeah, I wonder why we don't put the name on love or the name on the feeling or define it a little bit more.
I totally agree with that. And I also found the definition that she finds to be, I personally really resonated with that. I was like, okay, I can get behind that. And let me read that to you all because I feel like it's a great framing for, yeah, like I said, sort of a call to action. And she says, I'm grateful to have been given a definition of love that helped me face the places in my life where love was lacking. I was in my mid-20s when I first learned to understand love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. I just think that's such a nice way to think about it because sometimes when we talk about love, we talk about it as if it's happening to us and we have no say or our behavior isn't part of cultivating it. We use terms like falling in love, and it makes it seem like it's something that is out of our control. Whereas this is, to me, I read that as like a connection to self's continuous growth or really like prizing and holding in high regard the growth of someone else. Like, I don't necessarily feel like you have to use the word spiritual. It could be simply growth. And to me, like, I feel like that hits the same.
The word nurturing, like that really shows that it's like a continuous thing. It's not like, yeah, like you're saying, you fall in love or you think about things, you're love struck and it kind of almost implies that you're in this different state and then that's it. And you're just in that state. And yeah, I think the word nurturing sort of goes toward it being an active thing more. So yeah, I really liked that definition as well. Yeah, and I liked one of the quotes that kind of stuck out to me as well. It was saying that when we are loving, we are openly and honestly expressing care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. And I think in like just naming them all out like that and breaking it down, it made it more of a solid thing than like this abstract feels like a cloud and you can't really imagine it. But yeah, you're openly and honestly expressing these different things. And it's not just love, like care, affection, trust, commitment, respect, all of the things that are really important to have like a loving relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, it makes me think about this idea of meeting someone and having like a chemical reaction to them and feeling oxytocin and all those things. And I think at some point she talks on like, we can have those meetings with people and like, yeah, that's a moment with someone, but it doesn't equate like continually showing up and cultivating and choosing to like show up for that person because those chemicals eventually even out, right? And we're like with someone, or whether that's like a romantic partner or friendship, and we're having to show up in all these different ways, and that commitment. And yeah, I love the word nurturing, to your point,
Hmm.
nurturing that and really dedicating yourself to it. It feels like it's a practice that is more accessible, as opposed to like, wow, I've never fallen in love. Like that's never happened to me. It's like, no, you get to go out and create that for yourself. Like to me, I find it pretty empowering.
Yeah, I think one of the things in this book is really to try and get you to realize that or to be a bit more present around your thinking about it. Like
Hmm.
that's what it felt like. I really thought it was interesting the bit because, as you were saying, each chapter is sort of broken down into different areas around love, and it talks about how children learn love from their parents. So we're constantly going back to what we learned when we were little, and it talks about the fact that care is a dimension of love, and that really stuck out to me that you can feel cared for but not loved. So I guess why is it important for children to feel loved? It's a large question.
Right. Oh, what a question. Um, I think, well, yes, I think it's to your point. We do always sort of go back to childhood, family, because that is our blueprint for experiencing so many other things, right? I think she even mentions the family being the first like school of love. And, I think teaching children how to feel love and accept love is what helps them become, full beings. It helps them then go out and be able to actively participate in love. And, I think there is a difference between providing care in terms of like shelter, food, those things versus providing love and going back to, her definition, nurturing their growth in that way. Yeah, essentially like if we don't learn how to love in our families, which like a lot of us don't, right? We then go out and we might equate love with something else, right? There's a big part in this where she talks about how any sort of like abuse or neglect can never equal love. And this piece was interesting. Like I wonder if it was written now, if there would be, I think there should be an emphasis on this, but you know, physical punishment was like a large portion of this, which, she's essentially saying like, if your girlfriend was acting out, would you like pinch their arm as a way to teach them that that's not the right thing to do? Why are we doing this to children? Right. And if in their young minds, it's framed as like, this is for your own good, how is that teaching them to be loving? Like, are these behaviors you want them to then emulate in their either grown-up relationships or carry on to their children, And I think love can teach self-worth. It provides like emotional security. It teaches like relational skills. And so it makes so much sense to me that she would call the family like the first school of love. I don't know what were your impressions on this chapter?
She gives so many examples, which I thought was really helpful for kind of like conceptualizing it. But I think there was one piece where she talks about how it's been difficult with her mother to like for her mother to read about what she's written about by by her childhood and different love. So that's why I like the difference between like the care, because like on the surface, you could have had what looks to be a happy childhood if like, you weren't in these sort of like physically abusive situations, but there might still have been like a lacking of love. She gives examples about like, single parent households growing up and the need for like a neutral third party to sort of balance that piece out. I thought that was really interesting as well. And yeah, it's just, God, it's just like, it's so power. I just couldn't imagine having, it's like so powerful having a child and like having to try and direct them in the right way all the time. So I'm just like hats off to all the parents out there. Like
Yeah.
that's, it's a weight that I think is quite a heavy one.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it goes back to the original point of like love is learned,
Mm,
right? So this is the first experience a child has in learning how to love and how to receive love and create like an inner sense of worth. We don't equate food and shelter as experiences of creating self-worth within ourselves. Like, those are things we need to survive, but also we are wired for connection. So in some ways, it's like love is part of survival too, in terms of having relationships and self-worth as an adult and beyond.
yeah, it almost ties into what we were chatting about in the last episode about the intergenerational things, but it's like intergenerational love and how you accept it rather than it being like intergenerational trauma. But I guess it's the same thing. It's like the learning from the different patterns or trying to seek to understand how your parents learned their love. So you're not then doing the same.
Totally. I think in her point too is it's not just about children just feeling like individual well-being. It's about then them shaping a culture where love is practiced,
Mm,
right? So if we want to see more love in the future, like of course we would start with the children that are going to be shaping that.
mhm.
I like that this book looks at love beyond just romantic love, talks about love you receive from family, community, friendships, and we've talked about modern friendships before. Are your friends a source of love for you?
Well, you are for sure, Amanda. I have to say yes to this.
Yes.
This is a very leading question.
Yes.
Uh, but no, I was kind of thinking about it as like when you do think about love, and it's kind of like what we were talking about in the episode with Anna Golfar, but if you think about like love songs, they're all romantic love songs, or even like heartbreaks, it's all heartbreak. So I really liked that this looked at like getting love from other places. And of course, yeah, friendships are like a huge part of that because they're your chosen family. So it's the family that you don't have to necessarily worry about, like how they're teaching you love, but you kind of get to pick and choose. And I think it's the same thing that you have to nurture them. Like, I think as we get older, that's what happens where friendships maybe fade away as, people physically move or, change interests or things like that. But I think I can't stop coming back to the word nurture. Like you have to nurture these things. But yeah, I feel a lot of love from the friendships that I have and always like really, really happy to have them. Like those are your people that you're choosing, especially when you're not necessarily around your family that sort of genetically have to love you. You know? Do you feel a source of love from your friendships too?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like we've had a lot of conversations about friendship and I think that there's good in sort of decentering romantic love, not because it's not important, but because we don't always have the access to that. And it doesn't mean that we can't look at the friendships that we've cultivated and, nurture that, either that relationship or that person's personal growth. And so yeah, I definitely feel like friendship is such an important thing. And a lot of times we learn it's like those are our first relationships outside of our family.
Yeah.
So we get to sort of learn how to bring in an outside person and nurture that love for the first time with friendships. Yeah, I mean, friendships are we love friendships here, right? And it's funny because it makes me think about, I don't know if you remember this, but like this must have been years ago where I think I had said something to you about how like I wasn't sure if I had ever been in love or like fallen in love or something, and you were like, "Well, I love you." Like you had said this to me.
Oh, I don't remember
I
that.
don't know if you remember this, but I remember this was so long ago. So,
Um,
and I just remember being like so impacted and being like, well, yeah, you're right. Like, I love you too. I love you too. And I think that this was probably a time in my life where I was really centering romantic love as like the only source or really fixating on finding that or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I just remember being like, oh, like, duh. Like, I love you too. And I love my friends.
I
And
do like telling my friends that I love them. I'm like, why not? We
yes,
don't say that enough to your friends. Like, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And I remember like, it was like a WhatsApp exchange or something, right? And I just like, I remember being like, ah, I'm so struck by that. Like, why have I not been considering that for myself?
And
Yeah.
I think on the flip side of like seeking romantic love, you should be seeking friendship as well. Like
Yeah.
that's like I think for a long time in my life, those were two very separate things. Like I really like valued my friendships on this like higher level than anything else. And the romantic love seemed too unattainable. So I just didn't really like I was like, nah, like that's it's probably not me. Like, I'll focus on these friendships. But then you kind of realize that it has to there has to be a friendship for a romantic love to exist.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too, and it like that leads me into like the next question about like cynicism in love. And she talks about this, I think it's maybe that chapter on, no, it wasn't on greed, but she talks about this generalization of women seeking partnership over like seeking love. Like it's about finding a partner. It's about finding a partner in by any form.
Not nurturing the friendships once you found it as well. Like
Yeah.
really just like that's my partner and then that's it. Like that stood out to me as well, just from like conversations I think we've had. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no. So either like the friends go to the side, or even in that struggle or journey to finding like a partner, it's centered on partnership and maybe marriage for some people.
Mhm.
And like I said, this is a generalization, but as opposed to like feeling or nurturing love with someone. It's about like obtaining something. And she does go as far to say like there's like manipulation tactics, which I thought was an interesting word. There were some things in this book that I do wonder if they would sort of hit the same way written now, but
Well, I think she brought some of her heartbreak into this, right? Like she
yeah,
talks about leaving quite I mean, I think she does use the phrase like an abusive sort of relationship. And I think sometimes what she's saying is a little bit clouded by that. Like, I don't
yeah.
know how close to the time or anything that they were written. So that's I kind of just read it as like, oh, maybe that's like still a bit of a sensitive area.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the only other sort of maybe critique I would have of this is like some of her pop culture references felt a little I don't know, she like references Monica Lewinsky and
It's
Nicole Brown
a
Simpson
bit
and this
shamey. Like,
yeah, I was
mhm.
like, oh wow. It also does feel like a reflection of how those women were being talked about at that time. And so I thought it was interesting to talk about both those women in the chapter about greed, where I was like, you could have used like a CEO or someone. Like it was very like I just thought that was a really interesting choice, but I do honestly feel like that was a reflection of how those women were being discussed
Yeah.
at that time. So I will say that was like the like one part of this book I was like, I don't know if this plays for me.
That made me check when this was published. I was like, when
Yeah.
when when did this come out? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just, yeah, that was the only thing, like, the pop culture references I felt like, I don't know. I don't know if that's like landing for me. But like to your point, yeah, this book it was published in 1999. And with that, she talks about how like young people are cynical about love. We would have been those young people. I mean, arguably we're still young, but we were young at that
We
point
were
too. We
younger.
were we were younger.
Like, I don't know if we can call ourselves young when we were like, we remember the millennium. Like,
I
I think the ship sailed there.
I don't know, listeners.
39
elder
years young.
millennial, 39 young.
Yeah, like I like to call us old ennials because I think there's a
Oh,
differentiation between people that remember life when the internet didn't exist. Um,
yeah.
like the millennium is all, it's so all-encompassing. But if you can
Yeah.
remember what a dial-up sounds like, I think your experience is a little different to uh, high-speed Wi-Fi since the day you were born.
Yeah. It's like if you remember landlines, it's probably time for retinol, you know? Or not. Do you? Okay, do you think that we were cynical
Were or are, I guess. Were we
as young ones in the context of this inquiry?
I mean, probably like if you think about the world then, like it wasn't a very kind time to women, so it's hard to be open and like yeah, like emotionally open about love when like women were so harshly critiqued or I don't know. So I think it's wild sometimes. It's like I get those memes of like people rediscovering America's Next Top Model and like what how awful a show that was. And it's like no, that's just how we were to women all the time as well. And like not that that's really
Hmm.
anything to do with love, but it's I think when society sort of like downbeat or hard or we were still kind of coming out of traditional gender norms, but they weren't quite there yet because of I guess how society was putting down women, right? It was that's
Hmm.
always a reaction to the to like any increase in independence. So I think we're sort of cynical. I was probably cynical just because I'm a classic child of divorce, right? So I'm just like cynical about love growing up, mostly because in 1999 I probably would have been just really angsty and angry. I feel a lot
Yeah.
less cynical about it now.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel like there was cynicism, but that was for me a reaction to maybe like early heartbreak or sort of realizing that this thing that was promised to me was not as it seemed. Yeah, and maybe just like a all around like a lack of self-worth when it came to what I deserved or what I was going to receive when it came to love. And yeah, it makes me think about now like dating apps and how those are sort of like a breeding ground for cynicism.
Mhm.
And I forget where I heard this, but it's like it sometimes it turns into like a competition of like who can care less more, like and as opposed to like searching for a genuine connection. It's like all these games that are played around dating and how is that really serving anyone to not be leading more with your heart or an openness. But of course, you develop some cynicism when you've experienced heartbreak or whatever it is.
Yeah, I feel like dating apps make it seem like you're putting yourself out there because you're on this app, but you're actually shielding yourself and being less vulnerable than ever before. And you're like trying to connect with somebody in such a short time in such a shallow way, that it's
Yeah.
it's really difficult to sort of make those connections. I think you really have to want to put in the time and effort and not just use it as an ego boost. So that's totally cool sometimes too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also too, it's vulnerable. It's
Yeah.
vulnerable, right, to be seeking romantic love in such on such a stage, right? And so I think with that, our bodies don't remember that this rejection is coming from like a stranger, right? Like it's like oh, but I'm being vulnerable and this person has either not responded or is rejecting me in some way. And that feels really hard, of course. And like a lot of times, like you don't know this person. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the same as feeling rejected from like a dear friend or a family member. But yeah, it's tricky. Like, do you think young people are less cynical today about love?
I don't know. I think we have to listen to what RuPaul says that if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love anybody else? I always think about that. I don't know. The young people are so interesting, right? That I don't know, you like to think that the next generation, like, oh, it's going to be so stressful. The world's so terrible. How are they dealing with things? But they're actually like making such smart choices. And I'm like, just find myself just really admiring younger people and
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe it's not like an actual reflection of what love is like, but I've definitely been to so many shows recently where there's just younger people kind of slow dancing together, and I'm like, that's adorable. Like, you're probably in love right now. Like, that's in a public way that probably like I wouldn't have done when I was younger. I hope they're less cynical. I feel like there's more of an awareness or like a want around like authenticity now, and that's, I mean, I guess you have to be authentic to try and find love. So perhaps they're more loving than ever.
Interesting. I have a kind of a different take on it.
Oh.
Well, like I do
Well,
hear
because
you on
you're
the
actually working with younger people. I'm just like creeping them at the shows and like as they're walking down the street, like,
listeners know she's not.
No, but I mean,
Um,
I don't spend time with the younger people as
totally.
you're doing at work, like
Yeah, no, I think it's hard because it's so general. This is such a general question, right? And maybe this is also like I'm speaking from a generalization, but they're because of the internet and like access to putting yourself out there so easily. I do think, there's a joke about us millennials like having a weekend out and like uploading a million photos to Facebook and having albums of specific nights out. And that was
guilty.
that was the thing. They're all private now
Oh
because
yeah.
we don't need that on the internet, but like,
Look,
and
we didn't know the internet was forever when we did these
right.
things. Like, yeah.
Right. And I hear about like jokes of millennials being like so cringe and stuff, but I also feel like in response to that, younger generations are so obsessed with how they put themselves out there that it's like stunting, right? Because it's like, well, everything's on the internet forever or whatever. I don't want to put anything out there in case it gets criticized because like look how cringy like millennials are now or whatever. So that's just like a counter
Mhm.
to yours a little bit, but like I said, like this is such a like we're speaking so generally, and I do think it's so individual based. And on the other hand, I do think younger generations have so much more access to knowledge and self-study in a way because of the internet that like, yeah, perhaps they're on different journeys with this and will be able to like come into themselves more authentically sooner.
And do you think their parents may have had a better awareness of like creating loving environments as well? And not that like our parents didn't have the awareness, but it's a conversation now, right? Like,
Yeah,
I wonder the
definitely.
impact of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think parenting styles have shifted radically, even from boomers onto millennials. Yeah, I think every generation is probably being nurtured and loved more and differently than any other generation, right? So, yeah, I do think that younger generations might have been receiving a different type of parent that has really taken into play how to show up and actually love and not just care or provide support, right? But I mean, that makes sense, right? We've evolved and there's different priorities and it's like no shame to older generations that just needed to provide shelter, food, support in that way. Yeah, I think so.
Do you feel loved?
Yes, I feel loved.
The delay, you're just keeping me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I feel loved. I think like okay, so I really appreciated this book and I guess like one of my hopes for readers from this book is bringing it back to like love being an action. I felt like this book it inspired me to want to be better in love and to not shy away from it or, yeah, feel like it's not cool to like wear your heart on your sleeve or whatever it is. It made me want to show up better for my partner. And I think the framework of like nurturing not only the relationship, but like that other person's growth is such a nice thing to take from this because it's like, yeah, I have a say in this, like going back to like this idea of falling in love. It's like, okay, and you can choose to show up for the people in your life and provide this type of love and show them how you want to be loved in return.
I liked that she talked about as well, like the different aspects of love. Like I really loved I really love, I really enjoyed talking about the community, like the little community that
Yeah.
you have, because I certainly feel that because I moved like 2 years ago and I mean, only like two subway stations, but it's a totally different area, and I find myself with like, very friendly coffee shop down the street, my next door neighbor that like, fixes things for me and give me his homemade dry rub for the next time I'll ever make some ribs. But just finding that like little community love, I think is really helpful and important. And I think just goes to show that like the searching for the romantic love is not always just the only end goal, that you can kind of get love in all of these different places, in your friendships, in your community, if from your pets, all these things.
Yeah, aw. Yes, I love that. Our next book is Just Kids by Patti Smith, which historically has been one of Tara's favorites, and so I'm excited to talk about it. Why did you pick this book?
Because it is one of my favorite books. And when you said that, when you suggested Bell Hooks, the first book about love that comes to mind was Patti Smith, because it's just such a like it's just such a warm and fuzzy, and like I love this book. It wasn't fiction, so I was like trying to think. I was like, maybe I should pick a fiction instead. But her writing is so, like almost literary, that it feels a little fictionalized, even though it is a memoir to a certain sense, but more of like a memoir of her relationship with Robert Mapplethorpe. And I just love it. So historically, to the listeners, I'm a massive Patti Smith fan. I'm just a big old stan, and I have been unable to keep a copy of the paperback of Just Kids in my apartment since I read it. I've given it away 7 times because it's always that like, wait, you haven't read, you must read this book. So I did actually buy just for the people on the video, this illustrated version that is a giant hard copy, in the hopes that I won't keep giving this to people. And so far it's remained in my apartment, which is nice. But I just think it's such a beautiful book. And I listened to the audiobook this time, which I had never done before. So it was a really nice way to revisit it, because it's been some years since I've read it. Probably like 10 years since I actually had read it. I've read a bunch of her other stuff. I have a lot of Patti Smith books there. I met her once at a signing, so I have a personalized,
Oh,
yeah, end train.
wow.
I know it was only for like 3 seconds, and you're in a line, and she
That's
just,
all right.
I know I didn't get a picture, which is fine, but I just have a to Tara and Patti Smith
Aw,
from
so
M Train. So
special.
I know, like I said, I'm a big dork, but I just love it. I love this book.
So how was it this time? I mean, it's been 10 years, right? So that kind of brings me back to our the previous book we just talked about, and maybe your understanding or relationship to love now. Like, how was the reread this time?
It's a good question. I think I probably was more, when I first read it, like really into the romantic part of it, and like the idealized version of like romantic love, and even like, yeah, I think I used to think about almost like the Kerouac of it all. Like you can fall in love every day, and as people pass in and out of your life, and that's still love. And I think I used to think like that a lot. So when I first read it, I just really loved that. And rereading it this time, I was a bit more struck about their well, like their mutual love, how it adapts, like their connection really, and like how they prioritize their art, and how their art sort of intertwines with their love. So, if people aren't familiar, Patti Smith is a poet, artist, musician, probably most well known for, and a writer. And Robert Mapplethorpe is an artist, probably best known for his photography. So this book is covering kind of like the late 60s, where they're both kind of penniless in this New York City that just seems like from a movie. Like it's
Yes.
like doesn't exist. Like they meet each other in these sort of just coincidental circumstances, and they have this bond, and they are just this couple that make art together. And that's the first thing. Like they forego eating because they're so driven by like, we believe in each other's art and we believe in each other. And I think that's what I took away from it more this time around. Like just the confidence that 20-year-olds have in how they live their life. I love it.
This was my first read of this book.
Yeah, I was dying to
And
know what you thought about it.
yeah, I know I didn't, I like was like, I'm not gonna say anything about this so we can talk about it on the podcast. But yeah, I was struck by the storytelling of New York in the late 60s and just them like sort of rubbing elbows with all of these creators, artists, musicians. There's something so like sexy about that in this book that just feels like so unattainable now. I don't know, in terms of like, yeah, just like living in the Chelsea Hotel, being neighbors with all these struggling artists and getting to watch them develop in their careers. And like this book towards the end, I like burst into tears. I'm not going to go into the details about that, but I was like hit so hard emotionally in the last couple chapters and just sort of in awe of their love, right? And it started out to me, I was like, oh, okay, like this is like a story of like first love, but I didn't know the story of their relationship in that way. And so I was really struck by, okay, this actually isn't about romantic love for them. It's about like this really deep bond that they have and care for each other and like their love for art. There's this thing that they're both obsessed with. You know, they eat, drink, and sleep this together. And yeah, it got me thinking like how this relationship would probably be like pathologized in some way today as like codependent or yeah, like there's a lot there, but their intensity and care for each other was so surprising and it had nothing to do with like romantic love. It was like truly back to Bell Hooks's definition of like nurturing one's own like spiritual growth. I was like, wow, like once I started reading this, I was like, this to me pairs so well with the first book. Yeah, I was totally blown away. I was like weeping
Oh
and
yeah.
just yeah.
The first time I read it, I finished it on a plane and I was sobbing. Like I was just that person. I could see people look at it and I'm like, God, this book is amazing. But
Oh my gosh. I mean,
yeah.
I listened to the audiobook, which I really loved because I loved hearing her voice.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the last
She sounds like me in this
yeah,
voice.
oh my gosh,
That's good.
you put on your patty for this.
Oh God.
You put on your patty, it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I finished that book. I was driving and I was like literally burst into tears. I was like, do I need to pull over? Like this is but no, it hit me in such a way that I was like, this totally was not what I was expecting going in. Like
Mhm.
I had a feeling it would be about their artistry and there'd be a focus on that. But like, yeah, truly there to help nurture one another's like creative life felt like the priority of their bond. And yeah, it wasn't about it's not in the beginning it was kind of it was about romantic love for them, but just wow, what an amazing feeling to like meet someone and have that instant connection and dedicate like a good portion of your life to that person's growth.
Yeah, I even like that it almost felt like she reluctantly wrote this book. Like it took quite a lot of time. It was at like Robert's request. So I think before I knew anything about it, it can be very easy to just like, oh, that's just another rock and roll celebrity memoir about the Chelsea Hotel. But it's so much more than that because she acknowledges that this is her telling of their story in only the way that she can tell. So she's off the front, sort of putting her biases out there, but still telling the story in such like a gentle way of, yeah, like there's nothing, everything is always relevant to the relationship that's included in the story. So I kind of enjoyed that. It didn't feel like, like, oh, he's really famous now, so I'm going to tell about the story that time that we dated. It's definitely not that book.
Yeah, like in service of him and of what they shared
Yeah.
and the importance of sharing that with the world because I also feel like that is art in and of itself, right? Like this type of connection and bond to me feels quite rare. And yeah, I feel appreciative that she decided to share it with everyone else because it truly touched me. It was so beautiful and it shows like there's not like a perfect love, right?
Mhm.
Like there's not this like perfect experience with someone that doesn't require a lot of like self-growth and commitment, right, to showing up for that person's growth. And she writes about Robert in like such a beautiful way that shows such appreciation for him. What do you think about the way she ties in like her memories of the times with them as struggling artists? Like I said, I feel like it's like such a like a sexy part of this book.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it sound amazing to be like, oh, I wish I was penniless and like
Right. I
so
know.
driven by this art.
Yeah.
But there's sort of like there's an awareness to it as well. But yeah, I think I like how she really talks about how Robert's discovering his voice and like trying out different things and like doing the work, like because that's the whole thing about being better at any sort of creative act is that you have to put the work in. And I love that it showed, him being like drawing to making jewelry to being sort of like fascinated with photography without taking pictures himself. And because the cost barrier with the film piece before he was able to sort of almost get like a Patreon to help support his like growing skills. And then her in the same way that she was a poet and drawing and doing all these. I love that her side hustle was like finding like first edition books and selling them for like for more than she was buying them for. But it just goes to show the work that went into finding the avenue that really worked the most for them because you can look at somebody like Patti Smith and just think like, oh, she was probably always born to like front a band or, express her opinion and it took her a while to get there. So I think their memories together, it definitely is like romanticized for sure, but she paints it with such a nice brush.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's like such a colorful understanding of those times. And like, yeah, there's that like romanticizing of it, but like that's great storytelling. Like I was
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm like drinking this in, you
Yeah.
know?
And then also like they touch on as well the like not about the struggling artist, but like their connection and how his explorations with sexuality and like how that's
Yeah.
affected like their love and relationship. They just kind of openly were talking about that because he's probably more known as like a gay man with these very raunchy photography, which is sort of about like the kink and BDSM world. So there's an act of vulnerability as well of her telling about her part in that early relationship. And I think the like to that word nurturing, like her nurturing her love for him as he's exploring these different avenues of himself as they sort of drift apart and then they come back again. And I think it ties to like their deeper connection overall.
Definitely, like, and nurturing her own understanding of being gay and queerness and being very vulnerable and raw with, like, there probably wasn't a lot of representation for her to, like, understand more. But yeah, just her own process with, like, understanding that and giving him space to understand who he is and be who he is, right? Is, yeah, it's just so special that they decided to kind of share this with the rest of us.
Yeah. But she also talks about like other relationships she's had, but she
Yeah,
talks about them very much aside. So I
totally.
kind of love that as well. It's like, oh yeah, so you're kind of in this open thing that's like evolving and yeah, it's not just like this is my boyfriend and my partner forever. Their connection was like ebbing and flowing as they were in this sort of like, yeah, movie New York City.
It makes me wonder how she would write about her relationship with the man she eventually marries, right? Because obviously this book is like centering on this relationship with Robert,
Yeah.
and she does a great job of keeping that as the center, to your point, like bringing in these other relationships, but like, Robert's very much the center of this. So it makes me curious to like to see how she would reflect on maybe her marriage
She
and
keeps that very private. I don't think
yeah.
she's written a lot about Fred Sonic is his nickname. Because he passed away in like the late 80s, early 90s, I believe
Mm,
as well.
mm.
So a lot of her books like maybe touch on grief, but I don't think she has written that much about their relationship, which I think is probably goes to show like another deeper connection.
Yeah.
However, she has a book coming out in November, which is her
Oh.
next sort of memoir, which I think is more on childhood. I've already pre-ordered it because, like I said, I am just a big old dork. But I'll let you know. I feel like it won't touch on her marriage because she's got two grown kids as well, so maybe there's like a little bit of protection there. But I would love to read that story someday because I love it that she married this musician and kind of went to small town and raised children for a long time, you know. I always find that really admirable as well.
Hmm. And I have to say, I don't think you're a dork in this. I think I think you're ahead of the times
Mm.
because now we got the Swifties on board with Patti Smith because Taylor Swift references Patti Smith in the Tortured Poets Society song. And
Oh.
so you have a whole new generation of Swifties that are have been seeking out like Patti Smith's art. And yeah, just thought that was like, I'm like, Tara's cool, man. She was ahead of the time.
Well, I saw
She's on
her,
this morning one.
the AGO here is the Art Gallery of Ontario. I took you there once when you visited, but they
Mhm.
had, it would have been around the time, I guess maybe Just Kids had come out as well. I would have maybe discovered them at the same time, but they had a solo exhibition of all of her photography. And she does, I actually have a book in the other room about it. Her Polaroid photography, which I don't think she does anymore because they've stopped making the film, like those old school sort of windy Polaroid
Oh, yeah.
cameras. And I always really love it because she's so admirable. And like this book has it as well about like other artists and writers that she really likes. Like she just wears her inspiration on her sleeve. And a lot of her photography would be like a certain, I don't know, like Frida Kahlo's bed, some writer's chair. It'll be something like
Mhm.
that. And like there's a lot of atmosphere in the picture. So I always really, really liked that. So yeah, and I saw her once play a sold out show at Massey Hall, which was pretty fun as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm so glad that we are covering this book. Like, it's just so fun to hear your relationship with her and her art. And yeah, I think it's special. And I said, like I said, I do feel like these books pair so well together for me, at least.
Yeah, I think so. It's like I don't want to say clinical, but like a like really thinking about defining love and what that actually is. And then with this book that is just showing this relationship and closeness and love as well. Yeah, it's pretty great.
What do you think about Patty and Robert's relationship as it had like evolved?
I kind of loved that it did. Like it's you can tell there's like a little bit of heartbreak as their like romantic relationship sort of winds down. I was gonna say
Hmm.
ends, but it kind of moves into something else and there's like a little bit of there's a twinge of nostalgia with as it's happening. So like even as they talk about they lived in a studio place together and they're sort of creating their other lives with different partners and stuff, but they're still like we're gonna look after each other until whatever the certain goal was. I can't remember now. And they kind of stick to that piece and yeah, I think it just shows their deeper connection that they were always part of one another's lives. And I think it's also a good reminder of like the connection that you have with someone is only really known by you and that person. Like, and I know Patty's letting us into their connection here, but like that's like from the outside, it probably would not look like any. Do you know what I mean? And it's how you're building that connection with somebody is really only important to the two people that are part of the connection. And I just loved how it evolved and that they, you know, were always going to be part of each other's lives, even if it wasn't as frequent or anything, and that they were still able to kind of, gas each other up a little bit. And you could still
Hmm.
take her picture, like that iconic horses cover was the,
Yeah.
like Robert took that.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I liked it. What did you think?
Like I said, I went into this not knowing much about it, and so I was surprised in a really great way. I thought this was going to be about a book about like young love, and I was yeah, just like touched that it evolved into this thing that doesn't feel like it's easy to define. And I just like I to your point, I appreciated that as they aged, there was always this like maybe we're not like close to each other physically in any way anymore, but there's like this understanding that their love was important. And it seemed like there was also an understanding from their like partners to like honor and support that.
Yeah, and I don't think she would have written this book if Robert hadn't asked. Like you get
Hmm.
that impression that
Yeah.
he's like, tell our story, and she's like, okay, one day I'll tell our story.
Mm,
It's just because it's such a good story.
it's
Like,
such a good story.
yeah. Do you think this book has a complicated view of like platonic versus like romantic love, especially as their relationship evolves?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely, but I also think that that's okay. I think that it offers an expansive look of how relationships can go. I don't think it sort of follows this traditional monogamous type of heteronormative viewpoint of relationships. And I think that that's really beautiful, right? I think it, without sort of like naming the relationship type, right? Like they were practicing like non-monogamy with one another. And then also it evolved into this thing that I think people can really learn from. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think it needs to be classified as either. And I kind of think that that's sort of the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that it's, yeah, if like if you focus on the love is the constant and like what the type of love can ebb and flow and evolve. I think it sort of showed us that, yeah, because they were never really friends, right? Even from the beginning, it was like a romantic connection. So it's always kind of interesting when you have the romantic connection first and then like, because I know that's hard. It's hard to become friends with somebody that you've had that intense connection with. But I think they handle it pretty well.
And this goes back to our like Anna Goldfarb episode of like every relationship needing an about. Like they
Hmm.
had such a clear big about, which was like their art and committing to that together, right? Like it's just that, that's like the third partner in their relationship is like this love for their creativity.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
What do you hope readers take away from this book?
I just think I hope that it gives readers like a positive point of view about love. Like it just has like such a lovely feeling. Sure, it'll make you sob, but I hope readers take away just like that feeling of love and then also that feeling of like empowerment in creativity and maybe having that drive and connection with people. I don't know, maybe like just thinking about that in a different way. What do you
Hmm.
think?
I hope people take away, or I should say, I hope people take away maybe a little bit more of an expansive view on like what love is and what it can be, and that it's okay for our relationships to evolve.
Hmm. And it's just a nice little escape into the past of like this,
Yeah.
like it's just amazing to think about like walking around the city at that time. And like every time I go back to New York, I always walk past the Chelsea Hotel. I've never actually been in there because it was under construction for a long time, but I love walking past and like trying to imagine that world that just doesn't exist in that city. Well, not in that part of the city anymore. But I love, yeah, I love that. Because you lived there, right? Did you spend any time around that neighborhood?
Not really. Like this was definitely not on my radar at the time, but it does make me want to like go back and
Same. It really
do
made
some
me want to go back to
exploration.
New York. Yeah, we should
Yeah.
take, let's take a trip.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for listening to Books from Your Therapist. If you're interested in the books we talked about, we'll include the links in our show notes. If you'd like to reach out to us with your own book recommendations or a mental health practitioner or author interested in coming on to share, you can email us at booksfromyourtherapist@gmail.com.
And if you're in California and interested in working with Amanda, you can find her at amandathrockmorton.com and follow us on socials. We are at Books from Your Therapist on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And you can follow me on Substack at Tara Kremen. I actually wrote a little bit about Patti Smith, so you can read that there.
Yes, go check it out. Happy going into love as an active practice.
Happy loving yourself and then loving other people.